Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Mark Willis. Let's get into your money. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Alicia, for having me on.
Okay, so we've had lots of conversations about money on this show for sure. It is one of the driving factors behind business. There's a lot of entangled stuff on money. And I'm sure you see this in your business. Let's start by talking a little bit about what you do in your business so our audience has a frame of reference for where we're going today in this conversation.
Well, thank you. I've had the great privilege of working with clients all over the country on their financial life, their business, their future, their economy. I work with business owners, mostly real estate investors, and even NFL Super Bowl champions. But most of the clients I work with just want more agency. They want more control. They want more abundance and balance in their overall financial life. One guy in particular, he talked to me the other day as we were having a Zoom meeting, and he said, "Mark, I feel like I'm just a tennis ball floating down the gutter of my own life." And I said to him, that's terrible to hear. And he said his dream and his goal with working with me was to try to move upstream and to go on to bigger and better things. So I guess I feel like I've got the best job in the world because I love the work I do. And I've got, kind of a mind for numbers, but a heart for people. And that's really what brings me to doing the certified financial planner work that I get to do with clients all day long.
So let's talk about this from a business perspective, because human beings in general do tend to have a lot of messy stuff around money. Everybody wants more of it. And yet there's also this sort of societal, in some cases, religious conditioning that you're not supposed to want it. Then when you have it, it's like, okay, well, what do you do with it? Do you buy all the things that your heart has been desiring, or do you be smart and you save and you invest, right? So here we have individuals probably all over the map with respect to what their financial goals are, what their entangled money beliefs are. Where do you start with your clients when a client comes to you? And I assume they're probably, coming in with some money and now they're saying, okay, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Well, you're right. I think first and foremost, I mean, my first belief is that we act out of our emotions, not our rationality. Our logic usually undergirds or reinforces the emotion we originally had. And you know more about this than I do, but there's the deepest parts of our brain are, the quick response amygdala part of our brain, where we act out of our deepest fears, emotions, and more. In fact, I've heard it said that we can have 60,000 thoughts a day, but 95% of those thoughts are the same ones we had yesterday. And so what we do is mostly just repeating the same thoughts, actions, feelings that we've done for days, weeks, months, even years. And actually, there's a great quote by, I think it's Woods Hutchinson. He said it in the Saturday Evening Post. He said 80% of people, let's see, what did he say? He said 10% of people think, 10% of people think, another 10% think that they think, and the rest of us would rather lay down and die than think. And I think that's probably pretty true because I think our subconscious really drives our reality. I feel the conversations in my meetings with folks all the time. There's a common refrain I'll hear people say, like they'll say their subconscious belief about money, like the money is the root of all evil, or I don't deserve what I've built here with my business, or other people need it more than me. That's like excessive giving. You might see this in your practice. Or I need it more than others. So they've got this excessive greed. Or another comment I hear is there's never seems to be enough money. I can make more money, Mark, but I seem to spend more than I make, no matter how much my business does. or I don't need money, I'm good without it, or I rely on my spouse for my financial life and my spouse will take care of me, or hey, I'm just not good with numbers. That's a big one for business owners. I'm just not good with numbers. It's too complicated for me. I gave all my responsibility of my financial business life and my personal life to my accountant, or where's she at, the bookkeeper. So it can be a dangerous thing to act out of our subconscious when it comes to our money, because what we emotionally connect with, we think about. What we think about becomes our habits, and what we habitually do is what we ultimately become.
Well, and some of those things are self-image things where people, they just wear it as though it is just who they are, never allowing themselves to challenge those beliefs and create a different reality for themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
it really is a default then. And when someone is aware that they want to create something different for themselves, but they have these conflicting beliefs, this conflicting self-image with what they now want to create, that's where we see a lot of self-sabotage
Mm-hmm.
and a
Yeah.
lot of frustration and heartache and disappointment. And when you're working with your clients, I'm sure there's probably some mindset work that you have to do, even if that's not necessarily your area of focus, just to get people to be a little bit more practical, a little bit more pragmatic about reaching and achieving their financial goals.
Yeah, I mean, the boxes of tissues we buy here would surprise you, because there's many tears that are shed as we come clean on our past embarrassments with money. And that's me too, by the way. No one has a perfect financial life, not even me, not anybody, not your financial guru on the radio or whatever. So the honest truth is that, we have conflict within ourselves. I mean, I know what I need to do. I don't always do it. I mean, I know that I want a 6-pack of abs, but I still love ice cream, Alicia. So it's true in all areas of our life. We know what we need. There's plenty of information on the internet for how to have a great fit body, or to have a great financial life. It's not that knowledge is lacking. It's the willpower. It's the internal emotional state. It's the subconscious that really drives us and helps us become what we ultimately see of ourselves. It's sort of like the old phrase, you are what you eat. Well, that's also true. You reflect your current belief about yourself. This is why so many lottery winners end up bankrupt within, 18 months of winning the lottery, because they saw themselves differently than their current reality. It's why so many people get the pay raise from the boss and find a way to get themselves fired. It's why you might get your best, most incredible, ideal client ever. Wow, that client, she's going to make 7 figures for my business this year. That's incredible. And then you find a way to goof it up in the client service, and she ends up firing you as their vendor. So we tend to stumble back down to what we think we should be at, whatever that state is. And I call this the bear trap, because it really starts with what we've been talking about, Alicia, our beliefs. B stands for beliefs. And if we can find a way to reorient our beliefs, we can get out of this bear trap. But let me explain the bear trap quickly and see if this resonates with your experience with your clients. So first, we fall into a pattern of subconscious beliefs about money. And these beliefs drive everything we do, what we act, and ultimately what we become in our financial life. So BEAR, the first is beliefs. The next step in the bear trap of losing our wealth is excuses. E stands for excuses. All right. So we create for ourselves a series of excuses why I'm not X, why I'm not like that really famous business owner in my space, or why they're the anomaly and I could never measure up to them, or whatever it might be. After excuses, we stumble into actions that reflect our beliefs, whether we realize it or not. We say the wrong thing, we screw up the customer service, we lose that great client, we spend way too much money on that sports car that we shouldn't have bought. And then ultimately we find ourselves in the reality and the results of our poor beliefs, which only, what does our reality do? what do our results actually indicate? It indicates our beliefs. So once again, we're kind of going down a downward spiral because our reality reinforces the belief set that we experience. Oh, so look at that. The last 3 times I got a great client, I lost them. That's because ... enter the belief about money here. So that is the bear trap. Do you, what insights do you have on that, or experiences
I
with that?
love your acronym, and I love how you articulated what is going on, and everybody can relate to this. Like you said, it's in all areas of our life, and we have to break those habits of thought. We have to make those changes at the subconscious level of the mind, because willpower is not a sustainable strategy for long-term change. That's why it feels hard.
Mm-hmm.
And what a
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize is that when you actually create a change at the subconscious level of the mind, the action that is different from that previous action, like you referred to, the action is going to be in response to the beliefs and the expectations and the self-justification, which always, those excuses are so convincing. They're
Yeah.
so justifiable because we've got all this evidence that we keep creating from that loop that you were talking about. But when we actually create a change in the subconscious mind, now our behavior is different. And it feels easy to make those more empowering changes, those new, more empowering decisions, taking those actions that are actually reinforcing the new belief. And it doesn't feel like willpower. It doesn't feel like struggle. It doesn't feel like hard work, because you're not pushing against the old conflicting belief. It's gone, it's changed. So when we can remove that, and I have a whole process that I do for that, we get into all sorts of acronyms here.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But when we're able to remove that old association, that stuck loop, that old subconscious program, we're able to retrain the mind to a new, more empowering self-image. Our actions change, our behaviors change, and therefore our results change.
Yeah, that's beautifully well said. I agree. I think the key for me is digging deep into, well, let's try an experiment. I don't know how you would solve this downward spiral, but in my conversations with clients, and I'd really love your insights on this, and maybe I can just be a little bit better as a result. I'd love to be a little bit better as a result of our conversation in my servicing clients. But the key for me is, one, experimentation. Trade the excuse for an experiment. I don't know if I can always get my beliefs to change just at a drop of a hat. Maybe that's where hypnosis and more comes in. Maybe it does. For me, I found that experimentation is the replacer. I change out, again, bear trap stands for beliefs, excuses, actions, and results. But if I can change my old beliefs, my inherited beliefs, for my personal identified and my personally owned beliefs through a series of new experiments, I call it the one tweak a week, where you try one little thing every week. Let's try one little thing. I'm going to try this with my money this week, and let's see what happens. We can always go back to the life we were living before, because I don't know about you, but I believe, at least in part, we act our way into a new way of belief, as much as we might believe our way into new way of actions. So our experimentation creates new actions, which creates new results, which ultimately bleeds into an upwardly bound spiraling staircase of, positive reinforcement loops and new identities about who we are and what we deserve, or whatever our stuck point is with this thing called money.
Well, what you're talking about here is really powerful, because you're breaking the old habitual behavior. You're creating a pattern interrupt. So now you can create a new association. Now, hypnosis is a really effective tool, but this is something that I really drive home a lot. I'm actually working on a new book, and I talk about this somewhat aggressively that I'm all for modalities. By trade, I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I use EFT. I use a lot of different processes for releasing. I even get very metaphysical in a lot of my work, and we're doing a lot with the energy associated with our beliefs and with our goals and things like that. But modalities are just tools. Just like what you shared, that's a technique. That's a tool that we can use. Now, I've been doing this for over a decade. So I've learned a few shortcuts with respect to changing beliefs and patterns and things like that. But one thing that I will say is some of our shifts can happen very, very quickly, and others are a lot more entangled. So it's not just a singular belief that we're having to shift, it's a whole plethora of beliefs that are all tangled up together with self-worth and self-image and all the things that we've been trained and told that we're supposed to want, we're supposed to do, what makes us a good person, what makes us a bad person, what is success, what does that look like, how do I have to behave, how do I have to, do I have to have two fancy cars in the driveway, right, to feel like a successful person? Am I doing dumb things with my money to sort of fall in line with some of these entangled beliefs? And so we have to unravel a lot of these things. And so it's a lot of cleaning up of a variety of different beliefs and associations. But we've got to start always with what's really going on. Self-honesty. What do you believe?
Yeah.
Challenging that belief. And we can do that in all sorts of different ways, but it has to be done. There's that cliche, you can't fix something if you don't know it's broken. And that's entirely true. A lot of our beliefs, like what you were saying before, your clients, it's just coming out of their mouth. They don't even recognize how insidious that belief is. It is so deep within their psyche that it just seems obvious. It's just a known. It's just matter of fact.
Yeah.
And we have to call that out. We have to challenge that so we can begin to release and reframe and reprogram and create something new that actually is empowering and serving us, as opposed to keeping us stuck in the same old patterns that we clearly can acknowledge do not feel good.
That's really thoughtful, really well said. I can tell you've said that after years of, understanding this and how the human spirit works. I would be curious. I've always thought about belief and really our paradigm as kind of like a spider web. And we have all these different strings that are our individual beliefs. And again, this could be in every area of our life, our relationships, our fitness, our finances, but it all comes down to these different little principles for understanding the world we live in. And it comes out of our childhood, I think. I don't know much about this. Again, I'm totally speaking out of school here because I'm not a psychologist, but this is my own story. I think a lot of your beliefs come out of the first experiences you have with money or debt or shame or, pride or whatever your experiences are. And so I would imagine that your work, maybe our work together in different ways and different areas. I'm a CFP, so I don't really go too deep down this road, but my amateur exposure to this is that we trim those strings one at a time, and a mentor or a mastermind or something like that. Jim Rohn says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And there's this thing called mirror neurons in our brains, where if you see me smash my thumb with a hammer, your brain will light up in the pain center a little bit because you just saw me get hit with a hammer. Youch, right? Well, the same is true if I see someone hit $100 million in their business this year, and I'm looking to them as a partner or as a part of my mastermind or even just a mentor of mine or a guide. I at least know that is now possible, and I look up to that person. They're helping me string that new part of my spider web in my brain for what's even possible. And even better, if they can live not just the business financial success, in my personal opinion, I don't want just success at work. I want success in all areas of my life, abundance in all areas of my life. So what do you think about that as a metaphor? Is that a good way? Is there a better way to think about how we reframe our beliefs and how to do it?
Well, one of the things that I have to just dive into a little bit here, because you brought it up and it was so valuable. I know there were some people that caught it, but I really want to sort of shine the spotlight on it, because this ability to learn from, to grow our belief in what's possible for us by surrounding ourselves with other people is so incredibly powerful. Now, we all know that there are people who are financially just creating incredible wealth for themselves, whether it is, you know, what you're seeing in your Google feed about Elon Musk, or you're watching the news and you're hearing about these crazy acquisitions, people buying companies for billions of dollars. It's possible, but until you actually get yourself in a situation where it can become possible for you in your own mind, all of that knowledge is almost irrelevant. You also touched on the conditioning that occurs early on in life. And we know from, all of the research that's been done that typically from the time that we are born until we are, it varies depending on the expert you listen to, but let's just say about 8 years old, 7, 8 years old, we are just absorbing information. But you touched on something really interesting, because you mentioned it is that initial association. Now, sometimes that's true, and other times it is actually the most emotionally charged experience. So, your first memories of money may have been, bought me the ice cream, right? Or she got me the toy or whatever. And so there was sort of this association with money is abundant. It's fine. I can have what I want. But when a couple of years go by and you have this emotionally charged experience where you really, really, really wanted something, and mom or dad said, no, we can't because of XYZ, that emotionally charged experience is what anchors it deep in the subconscious mind. And those are the ones that tend to trip people up the most. Now, if you're in a situation where you're also repetitively hearing and seeing and feeling the same lack, the same scarcity, the same patterns, the same things are being said over and over and over, that's another way that we get deeply conditioned. And so, to your analogy of the spider web, yeah, we've got a lot of entanglement. We have all of these very specific memories, and we form conclusions at a very young age when we don't have a lot of wisdom, we don't have a lot of experience. We're really not in a very good place to be coming to these lifelong conclusions about money, or about our worthiness, or about what's possible for us, about our level of self-confidence. Are we attractive? Are we successful? Are we smart? And yet, in an emotionally charged moment, as a very young individual, we are forming these that become lifelong beliefs until we're willing to challenge them now as our older, wiser self, where we have more evidence to show us that is not a serving belief. That's not even necessarily a true belief. So many of our beliefs are completely irrational because they were formed at that young, sort of naive stage in our life, in many cases, in a moment where we were in a very low place emotionally. And it just gets anchored in and accepted as truth. And now here we are, intelligent, well-meaning adults living out these crazy things that were just conclusions that were formed at these early stages in our lives.
Oh, that's really thoughtful. And boy, I think you're speaking the truth there. One thing that really brought it home for me was the emotional importance is more important than chronologically being first. I totally just that resonates big time as true for me. And it gets me thinking. Again, part of my personal journey is to find a way with this technique of the bear trap to get to a bear hug with money is to experiment. And so here's my brain thinking about experimentation. What if this is just an idea? I was listening to psychotherapist Andrew Huberman, I think, talk about this. He was describing how you can remember something much better if you're shot with adrenaline right after you learn it. So he was actually teaching students how to prepare for a test. He'd say, study, learn your calculus or whatever, but then go on like a big run or take an ice bath or something after you're done studying, and it'll help you remember it. And he was tying it back to like our days on the savannah or whatever, when you'd like where you learn more about how to stay alive, through the shot of adrenaline when you almost fell off that cliff or, got chased by the tiger or something. So just thinking out loud, I'm really just spitballing here with you here today. But what if there was some sort of association where you could intentionally find those beliefs that you want to change? Like, there's never going to be enough money. What if when you close that big client in your business, you did something like you went out into the ice bath you took an ice cold shower for a minute. I don't know. Or if you decide to go on a quick run. I remember I would do little dopamine hits, but I think better than dopamine, like getting a latte or something cool like that after I did something nice in my business. But I think maybe better than dopamine would be adrenaline to sort of remember what worked and to reinforce that. I don't know. That's maybe a hack and less of a deeper like true fix.
Well,
But what are your
everybody's
thoughts?
got sort of their own unique way that they are wired. And so that is the beauty of experimentation on an individual level. When I'm doing any type of mindset work with someone, what we are always aiming for is, once we remove the negative emotional charge with the old association, we want to replace it with a new positive association. We want to create within the mind a new association, a new known, because the old known was no longer serving us. We're getting rid of that. We want to replace it with the new known. So when someone believes that money is easy, closing those big clients, I can close these whale clients, no problem, right? It's a known in their subconscious mind. And so when they do it, there already is that positive association that is formed. When we want to create a new known, when we're deviating from the old destructive pattern that is not serving us, we need to create what kind of emotional association do we want with this new belief that we are creating and anchoring in our subconscious mind, so that that becomes the new default. So rather than defaulting to some type of self-sabotage, because your mind still doesn't believe that's who I am, that's not what I do, this is just a one-off, it's too good to be true, I'm going to lose it, something bad is going to happen. You catch yourself when you're feeling those negative emotions. You're able to go through that process of the pattern interrupt, releasing and letting go of the old negative association. You have to create that new positive association. Mm-hmm. What do you want to feel? And we're conditioning our mind even before, in many cases, the actual event happens. So you want to create a new reality with money, you've got to start priming your brain. What kind of associations do you want to have with that? So when you close that whale, right, and you've got more money than you've ever had in your bank account before, you don't self-sabotage. You've already primed your mind to say, this is how I feel. It feels natural. It feels normal. It feels good. This is just who I am. See, This is self-fulfilling evidence. Now your mind is justifying with reinforcing beliefs as opposed to those old practiced beliefs that cause you to do dumb stuff.
You bet. Yeah. Well, I'm so impressed with that. And I think you're exactly right. Having a internal commitment to the emotions you expect to have when the thing that you want to have happen happens. Wealth is coming my way. I love it when I ... close that big deal, whatever. I just think that's it's priming you emotionally, and I think that's fantastic. And it shows why you're so good at what you do. I think I was reading in the Journal of American Medical Association that the and that's a fairly astute journal in this country for medical research. They said that they termed it a wealth shock. That's the medical diagnosis. They called it a wealth shock. And they said if someone experiences a wealth shock, and they define that as losing about 100 grand on average, if you lose that large amount of chunk of cash, that you have a 50% chance of dying early than someone who does not have a wealth shock. So what you and I are talking about here, it's pretty deep. It's scuba gear level for a CFP, to be talking about emotions and energy and changing our beliefs. But I literally think there's a rate of return to sanity here. And I think there's a rate of return on how we put our beliefs to work. I truly believe, and I can back it up with science and math, that you are your greatest investment if you believe it. You can also be your greatest liability if you believe it. So if you have your money in different buckets that can lose a giant chunk of it because somebody sneezed the wrong way or someone, tweeted the wrong thing, and you have a wealth shock, it's going to literally, at least scientifically on this journal, it's going to give you a higher likelihood of death. So it matters not only what's inside this heart and mind of ours, this beautiful creation of ours here that we've been given, but it also matters, like, how are you putting that money out into the world? What is it doing while it's out there? If it's in, a bunch of air tokens and cryptocurrencies and things that could go up or could go down, you're going to be living a life that's constantly experiencing these wealth shocks that may or may not lead to ultimate happiness, fulfillment, or what you're trying to achieve. So I know that's a slight diversion from what you mentioned, but I just think that I'm bringing it down the ladder because I think there's a lot of really practical things here for, like, what do I do with this money now that I've earned it from this great client? I could blow it on a lotto ticket, or I could put it somewhere where I know that it's never going to experience a wealth shock. And that's what I mostly specialize in, is helping people find those places, those parking spaces in their business and outside of their business, so that they can have the best shot at success, whatever that success looks like for them.
I love that. And so it comes full circle because there is always a pragmatic side of everything. So we've been talking a lot about the mental, emotional side of things, your beliefs and how that adversely or positively affects your wealth. But this is a real, practical, tangible world that we are living in as well. And so we need to be making smart, pragmatic, practical decisions. And what I found is that when you have that clear minded intention and you are not sabotaging yourself, right? Hopefully people listening who are above and beyond any type of massive financial self-sabotage are at the stage where they're saying, you know what? I need somebody like Mark who gets it so that I can do practical, pragmatic things with my wealth to ensure that money continues to grow and remain safe and stable so that I can continue to enjoy the abundant life that I'm creating for myself.
Yeah, the financial universe is vast. And as a CFP, I grew up not knowing a lot about money, and I certainly didn't get handed a CFP just graduating high school or college. In fact, I got handed something much bigger than that. It was a bunch of student loan debt and a plan. No, not much of a plan to pay it off. And yeah, the particulars of starting a business, when I started mine, I needed cash, I needed capital, I needed contingency funds, I needed liquidity, I'll tell you a quick story about one of our recent clients. He had $1 million line of credit with his business at a local bank. $1 million, that's how he operated his business. And the bank called him up in the middle of a downturn and said, I'm sorry, but you've been a customer of ours for many years, always faithful with your payments on our line of credit. We're terming you out. You need to pay us $1 million over the next 5 years on top of your business operation expenses. Youch. So he was furious. And he said, I never want to darken the door of that bank ever again, or any bank ever again. And so he and I established a line of credit that he can now rely on, that's guaranteed, that he can use for himself. So rather than begging and kissing the ring of that banker, he has his own bank that he set up, in essence, that he can now call on, use, act as a line of credit for himself. And it saves him a lot of stress, saves him a lot of worry. Every other competitor in his field is chasing the banker, asking for that loan. And what's that Mark Twain quote? A banker is a fellow who will lend you his umbrella when the sun shines, but wants it back as soon as it starts to rain. So this guy, he knows he's got this bucket of money because he's the banker. What's he going to do? Deny his own loan? And so this brings it back, like you said, full circle, because he now knows with absolute confidence and certainty that he never has to go chasing somebody else for his financial success. He doesn't have to live under somebody else's blessing. He gets to create his own financial future. He has it written into a contract that he's going to be successful. Can you imagine the power, the goosebumps that I get when I think about someone having a contract with their money and the success of their future written into a literal contract that he has with his money? What if we all had a contract with our future self that said, I know that I'm going to be worth X dollars in 10 years or X million dollars in 10 years or whatever your number is, or I'm going to have these sort of outcomes in the next 5 years, 20 years, whatever. To have that kind of confidence, certainty, sanity, which I think is maybe the least invested commodity in our world right now, is sanity. So let's invest in some sanity, for goodness sakes. And let's find financial tools, practical, time-tested, like written right into the tax code kind of financial tools that we know are going to help our business and our family life and our personal life survive and thrive.
So good. All right, Mark, how can our listeners connect with you?
Well, the best way to reach out if you'd like to meet, I don't oftentimes bring my scuba gear to conversations like this, Alicia, but you've given me some really great things to think about. And so I'm going to keep thinking about them. And if folks want to keep talking with me about any of what we've talked about today, go to kickstartwithmark.com. It's the best site to get in touch with me. We can have a 15-minute quick phone chat, see if we're a good fit to continue a discussion about your financial life. And that's kickstartwithmark.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark, for being with us today. I really enjoyed this conversation. We got to get into some of my favorite topics on the subject of money. So I want to thank you for being such a gracious guest and sharing your wisdom with all of us.
Well, thank you. You've given me a lot of stuff to think about and get excited about. So thank you very much, Alicia.
And of course, have to thank all of our listeners. We're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.